The billionaire froze so completely that the champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered across the marble floor. Her 8-year-old daughter, a child who had spent years refusing to answer questions about school, doctors, or even her own mother, had just written a complex mathematical formula across a restaurant napkin with the confidence of a university professor. But what terrified Celeste Whitmore was not the formula itself. It was the tiny handwritten note beneath it, a correction made in the unmistakable handwriting of a man she had buried in her memories years ago. A stranger sat only a few feet away, quietly eating lunch with his little boy, unaware that the most powerful woman in the city had just recognized something she never thought she would see again. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can heal what money cannot, forgiveness can open doors that anger closed, and everyone deserves hope and a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you can become part of our family and never miss another emotional journey. Celeste Whitmore had built an empire before she turned 40. Her name appeared on skyscrapers, hospital wings, technology patents, and charity foundations. Business magazines called her fearless, investors called her brilliant, and competitors called her impossible to defeat. Yet there was one battle she had never learned how to win. Her daughter, Marlowe, had withdrawn into silence after the death of her father. She was 8 years old, exceptionally intelligent, painfully observant, and almost completely unwilling to speak in public. Teachers described her as gifted but unreachable. Specialists had offered explanations, therapies, exercises, and expensive programs, but nothing seemed to unlock the little girl who spent most of her days drawing geometric patterns in notebooks and watching people from a distance as though she were trying to understand a world that had disappointed her too many times. Celeste responded the only way she knew how. She threw resources at the problem. She hired the finest tutors. She renovated an entire wing of their home into a learning center. She brought specialists from 3 countries. She even established a foundation dedicated to childhood education, quietly hoping that helping thousands of children might somehow compensate for her inability to reach her own. But Marlowe remained distant. She would accept affection only in small doses, and whenever Celeste asked her to explain what she was feeling, the girl simply lowered her eyes and returned to her drawings. One warm Saturday afternoon, Celeste took Marlowe to a private restaurant attached to one of her downtown properties. It was supposed to be a simple lunch before a charity board meeting. Celeste had insisted because she wanted one ordinary afternoon with her daughter, without doctors, tutors, security meetings, or investors. Marlowe sat beside her mother, quietly arranging sugar packets into symmetrical patterns while Celeste answered a few messages on her phone. At a nearby table sat a single father named Everett Hale and his 9-year-old son, Rowan. Everett looked nothing like the wealthy executives who usually occupied the restaurant. His jacket was inexpensive but neatly pressed, his shoes were worn, and his hands carried the faint scars of a life spent doing work that demanded more than polished meetings. He spoke gently to Rowan, helping him solve a puzzle printed on the back of a children's menu. Celeste barely noticed him until Marlowe suddenly stopped arranging the sugar packets. The little girl stared at Everett. Then she picked up a napkin. Without saying a word, she began writing. At first Celeste assumed it was another drawing. Then she saw the symbols. The equation was not something an 8-year-old should have been able to solve. It involved a pattern recognition formula that Celeste herself had encountered years earlier during graduate-level economics research. Marlowe had not merely copied it. She had simplified it, corrected a missing variable, and written the solution beneath it. Celeste's heart began pounding. She looked at Everett. The single father was still helping Rowan. Marlowe stood, walked toward him, and placed the napkin on his table. Everett looked down. His expression changed instantly. He picked up the napkin, studied the equation, and then looked at Marlowe with an astonishment so genuine that Celeste knew he had not expected this. Marlowe pointed at the final line. Everett smiled. Then he took a pencil and added 3 tiny symbols. Marlowe's face transformed. For the first time in months, Celeste saw her daughter smile. It was not a polite smile. It was the bright, spontaneous smile of a child who had finally found someone speaking a language she understood. Celeste approached the table, her confusion turning into suspicion. She asked Marlowe where she had learned the formula. The girl pointed directly at Everett. Celeste looked at the man again. He lowered his eyes. Something inside her shifted. There was something familiar about the way he held himself. The straight posture. The controlled movements. The habit of scanning the room without appearing to do so. The faint scar near his left eyebrow. Then Celeste saw the old silver ring hanging from a chain beneath his shirt collar. Her breath caught. Years earlier, before wealth had hardened her, before her company had become an empire, Celeste had known a young man named Everett Hale. He had been brave, stubborn, compassionate, and determined to serve his country. Then he had joined the Navy. Their relationship had ended painfully after a series of misunderstandings, long separations, and one devastating message that Celeste had received while building the first stage of her company. She had believed Everett had chosen duty over her. He had believed she had chosen wealth over him. Neither had understood the truth. But Everett had not been merely a sailor. He had been a Navy SEAL. Celeste stared at him as memories returned with painful clarity. Everett finally looked at her. Years of silence seemed to pass between them in a single second. He did not smile. He did not reach for her hand. He simply said that he had never stopped caring about the person she had been before money became the only language she trusted. Celeste struggled to understand why Marlowe knew him. Everett explained that he had never taught Marlowe anything before that afternoon. He had only noticed her working with the sugar packets and had recognized that she was thinking through patterns. When she showed him the formula, he corrected one small mistake because he had learned similar mathematical methods during military training. But then Marlowe did something that left both adults speechless. She pointed at Everett's son. Then she pointed at herself. Then she placed both hands together like two pieces of a puzzle. Rowan understood before Celeste did. Marlowe wanted to learn with him. Celeste's heart broke. Her daughter, who had rejected every tutor Celeste had hired, wanted to sit with the son of a struggling single father. For the first time, Celeste wondered whether the problem had never been Marlowe's ability to learn. Maybe it had been the adults who kept trying to force learning into a shape that made them comfortable. Over the following weeks, Everett began helping Marlowe with mathematics in the afternoons. Celeste initially resisted. She worried about security, reputation, and boundaries. Everett refused payment. He told her that children should not have to earn the right to be understood. That sentence stayed with Celeste. Everett's own life was far from easy. After leaving the SEALs, he had struggled with ordinary life. The discipline that had once saved him became difficult to translate into civilian routines. He had lost friends overseas, carried memories he rarely discussed, and eventually became a single father after his marriage ended. His son Rowan was the one person who kept him grounded. Everett worked several jobs and lived modestly, but he never allowed Rowan to believe that poverty meant a lack of dignity. Marlowe began changing. She started speaking again. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But gradually. First she whispered answers. Then she asked questions. Then one afternoon, she laughed so loudly that Celeste dropped the papers she was holding. Celeste realized something painful. Her daughter had not needed another expensive program. She had needed someone who could sit beside her without demanding that she become someone else. But Celeste's happiness was soon interrupted by an old wound. Her father, Lionel Whitmore, the man who had helped build the foundation of her empire, discovered that Everett was spending time with Marlowe. He immediately accused Everett of using the family. He reminded Celeste of Everett's military past and suggested that a man with his background could never be trusted around a billionaire's child. Celeste almost believed him. Almost. Then she discovered something that changed everything. Everett had turned down a lucrative security position with one of Celeste's competitors months earlier. He had also quietly paid for Rowan's classmate's medical treatment when the child's family could not afford it. He had never told anyone. Celeste realized that the man she had once accused of abandoning her had spent years doing the very thing she claimed to value most, helping people without expecting recognition. The real turning point came during a school mathematics exhibition. Marlowe had been selected to present a project based on the formula Everett had shown her. Hundreds of parents attended. Celeste sat in the front row. Everett stood at the back beside Rowan. Marlowe walked onto the small stage carrying a poster covered in equations. Her hands trembled. She looked at Celeste. Then at Everett. For several seconds, she said nothing. The room became uncomfortable. Celeste feared her daughter would retreat again. Instead, Marlowe took a breath and began explaining the formula. Her voice was quiet at first. Then stronger. She explained how patterns could reveal answers that looked impossible at first glance. She explained that mistakes were not proof of failure. They were clues. And then she said something that made Celeste cry. She said that sometimes people needed someone patient enough to show them that they were capable before they could believe it themselves. Everyone applauded. Celeste did not. She simply covered her mouth and cried. Because she finally understood. Marlowe had not been talking about mathematics. She had been talking about Everett. And perhaps, without realizing it, about herself. After the exhibition, Celeste found Everett outside in the bright afternoon sunlight. She apologized. Not for one mistake. For years of mistakes. She admitted that she had judged his military service, misunderstood his silence, and allowed pride to convince her that being successful meant never admitting she was wrong. Everett forgave her, but he did not pretend the past had never happened. He told her forgiveness was not about erasing pain. It was about refusing to let pain control the future. Celeste finally understood the lesson she had spent her entire life avoiding. Money could build schools. It could fund hospitals. It could create opportunities. But it could not make someone feel safe enough to speak. Only trust could do that. Months passed. Marlowe became more confident. Rowan became like a brother to her. Everett became a quiet, steady presence in their lives. And Celeste changed in ways her employees noticed before she did. She listened more. She apologized more. She stopped treating every problem as something that needed to be conquered. She even changed her foundation's mission, creating free mentorship programs where children were paired with patient adults who focused not only on academic performance but on confidence, belonging, and emotional support. She named the initiative Second Chance Learning. When reporters asked why, Celeste gave an answer that surprised everyone. She said that the greatest lesson of her life had not come from a billionaire's boardroom, a university, or a business empire. It had come from an 8-year-old girl, a single father, and a formula written on a napkin. Years later, that napkin remained framed in Celeste's office. The formula was still there. So was Everett's handwritten correction. But beneath it, Marlowe had added one final sentence. It said that people are like equations because sometimes the answer is already inside them, they simply need someone patient enough to help them see it. Celeste kept that sentence where she could see it every morning. Everett eventually became the director of the Foundation's mentorship program, not because he needed Celeste's money, but because he finally found a way to use the skills he had developed in the military to protect people in a different kind of battlefield. Marlowe grew into a confident young woman who never forgot the day she first spoke to a stranger in a restaurant. And Celeste learned that the most valuable thing she had ever owned was not a company, a mansion, or a fortune. It was the second chance she had nearly thrown away. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. And before you go, leave a comment telling us this: What is one person who changed your life simply by believing in you when you did not believe in yourself? Sometimes one kind person can change the direction of an entire life. Sometimes forgiveness arrives years after we think the door has closed. And sometimes the greatest formula in the world is not found in a textbook at all. It is the simple equation of kindness plus patience plus courage, creating something money can never buy, a second chance.